I always thought infidelity was something that happened to other people, the kind of drama you read about on gossip sites or overhear whispered about at the office water cooler. Never once did I think it would come knocking, quite literally, on my own front door. The day it started was ordinary enough. My wife, Hannah, had been on edge lately, restless, pacing the living room, picking fights over the smallest things. I chalked it up to stress. After all, we were both exhausted trying to juggle work and our 3-year-old son. But that afternoon, I decided to surprise her. I left work early, stopped by a bakery she loved, and came home with her favorite pastries. I thought maybe we could sit on the couch like old times and just talk, reconnect. I remember standing in our kitchen, cutting up some fruit, humming a tune I couldn't get out of my head, when I heard a knock at the door. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked over, already smiling, expecting maybe a neighbor or a package. It was a young guy in a pizza delivery uniform, maybe 21 at most, holding 2 large boxes of pizza. "Delivery for Hannah," he said, eyes flicking up at me with a nervous smile. She ordered extra garlic bread, too. That was odd. Hannah hadn't mentioned ordering pizza. She was upstairs, I realized, and I called out to her. There was a strange pause before she responded with an awkward, almost startled, "Yeah, that's mine. Be right there." The moment Hannah appeared at the top of the stairs, something in the air shifted. She looked different. Not in the obvious sense, she was still in her lounge pants and one of my old shirts, but her face was flushed, her hair pulled hastily into a ponytail, and her eyes darted between me and the delivery guy like a deer caught in headlights. My stomach twisted. I brushed it off as paranoia. The delivery guy, Jake, as I soon learned, handed over the boxes, but not before their hands lingered longer than what felt normal. I saw it. The micro expressions, the subtle smiles, the unspoken electricity. It was like a punch to the chest. Later that evening, I couldn't let it go. As Hannah showered, I checked her phone, something I'd never done in 7 years of marriage. I wish I hadn't. There, in the messaging app, were dozens of texts between her and Jake, filled with inside jokes, late-night confessions, and a few photos I'll never erase from my memory. Photos of her, wearing that same oversized shirt, but posed in ways meant for someone else's eyes. I remember sinking to the floor, phone in hand, tears welling up, my mind spinning like a tornado. How could she do this? Who was this person she had become? I thought back to the night she claimed she was exhausted, too tired for any intimacy, and now realized it was all a lie. She'd been giving herself to someone else. That night, she climbed into bed next to me like nothing happened. I lay awake, replaying the messages, listening to the rise and fall of her breathing, feeling like I was lying beside a stranger. I wanted to wake her up, confront her, scream until the walls fell down. But instead, I just lay there, paralyzed, consumed by a mixture of rage and heartbreak. The next morning, I watched her brush our son's hair and kiss him on the forehead, like any loving mother would. The sight twisted the knife deeper. I felt both betrayed and trapped, unable to imagine tearing apart our family, but equally unable to look at her the same way again. I decided I needed proof beyond the texts. Something undeniable. Over the next week, I installed a discreet camera in our entryway, telling myself it was for security. But what I was really doing was waiting. Waiting for that knock on the door. Waiting to see if my worst fears would materialize before my eyes. And then it happened. I was working from home when the camera app pinged on my phone. Jake stood at our door again, holding a pizza bag, but this time Hannah didn't even bother to wait until he left. She pulled him inside the moment the door closed, and they disappeared from the camera's view. I felt every second of silence stretch into eternity. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I wanted to rush downstairs, throw him out, confront them both, but I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, breathless, watching my marriage disintegrate in real time. The silence that followed felt like it could suffocate me. I stood frozen in my office, my mind spinning with what I'd just seen on the camera feed. My wife, the woman I had trusted with every part of myself, pulled Jake inside like they were lovers coming home. No hesitation, no shame. I felt a dark emptiness settle into my chest. For a few minutes, I just stood there, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then something snapped inside me. I crept out of my office and down the stairs, each step deliberate and silent. I could hear faint voices coming from the living room, hers, playful and sweet in a way she hadn't spoken to me in months, and his, low and confident. I stopped just outside the doorway and listened. "Did you miss me?" she asked him, her tone soft and full of desire. I heard the rustle of fabric, the creak of the couch. My hands balled into fists. "Always," he replied. "Especially when you text me those pictures." She laughed, a bright, carefree sound I hadn't heard from her in ages. It made me sick. I inched forward, catching sight of them from the hallway mirror. She was sitting on his lap, her arms around his neck, their lips inches apart. It felt like a knife twisting deeper with every word, every touch. I wanted to storm in, to drag him out of my house and scream at her until she understood what she'd done. But instead, I backed away. I needed a plan. I couldn't let rage ruin what little control I had left. I retreated upstairs and called my brother, who'd been my rock since we were kids. His voice, calm and steady, grounded me enough to think clearly. I told him everything, and he urged me to gather all the proof I could. I felt like a coward, hiding while my wife betrayed me a floor below, but I knew I needed to protect myself and our son from the storm that was coming. When they finally left the living room an hour later, Hannah padded upstairs and showered, humming to herself like it was just another day. I watched her emerge from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, cheeks flushed. She looked at me with wide, innocent eyes, like she had nothing to hide. "How was your day?" she asked sweetly, leaning down to kiss my cheek. I forced myself not to flinch. "Busy," I said, my voice flat. The next morning, I met with a lawyer, bringing with me copies of the texts, the camera footage, and screenshots of every piece of evidence I'd collected. I explained everything: the timing, the delivery orders that matched when I was working late, the suspicious nights out. My lawyer nodded grimly, assuring me I had enough to protect myself if things got ugly. Back at home, Hannah was busy planning a date night for us, as if she could sense the distance growing between us and wanted to reel me back in. She suggested ordering in from the same restaurant Jake worked for. I felt my stomach turn. That evening, after our son had gone to bed, I finally confronted her. I pulled up the video on my phone and pressed play. Her face went pale as she watched herself on camera, giggling as she let Jake into our home. She tried to speak, but I cut her off. "How long?" I demanded, my voice low and trembling. "How long have you been lying to me?" Her eyes welled with tears, but I saw no remorse, only fear at being caught. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she whispered. "I just needed something else. You've been so busy," and I felt alone. I almost laughed at the absurdity. I'd been busy working to give her and our son the life we'd always dreamed of. "So you slept with the delivery guy?" I spat. "That was your solution?" She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "It was a mistake," she sobbed. "I don't want to lose you." I shook my head. "You already have," I said quietly. Over the next week, we moved through the house like ghosts. I stayed long enough to speak to my lawyer and start making arrangements for custody of our son. I couldn't sleep in our bed anymore. I set up camp in the guest room, each night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything fell apart so quickly. When I finally packed my bags to leave, she tried to block the doorway, pleading with me to stay. But I couldn't look at her without seeing the betrayal, the texts, the video. I gathered my things and, without a word, walked out into the night. I didn't know what the future held, but as I drove away, a strange sense of peace settled over me. I had lost the woman I loved, but I had found the strength I never knew I had: the strength to stand up, to protect myself and our child, and to begin the long, painful road of healing.